So we could say x, we could say d for days. At least means what? At least means you'll have that many or more. So the number of days would be greater than or equal to 24. If I said at most, what would we do? Less than or equal to. If I said, less than or more than, then those would not have equal to's with them. Next one. 7 less than. What does less than mean? Subtract. So is this 7 minus something or something minus 7?
7 minus.
Less than kind of flips the order. So it's the minus 7 at the end. The product, what does product mean? Multiplication of a number and 5. Yep, x times 5 or 5 times x. So we have 5x minus 7 is at most. So that would be less than or equal to, because it can't be any more than 10. I didn't ask you to solve them, so that's all you have to do there. All right, so that's kind of wrapping up the inequality piece from yesterday. Is that okay? Now we're going to jump back to the very first unit where we started in August, talking about lines. How do we find slope? Rise over run. So we have some different options, but when we're looking at a graph, we usually just did rise over run. So if I start here, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I went backwards 3. So my slope is negative 5 over 3. How do you know just by looking at that line that the slope would be negative? It's declining, decreasing. You could get the same thing if you started here. You would go down 5. And then over positive 3, so same slope. All right, if you have an equation in standard form, how do we get the slope from that? If we subtract the 3x, divide by negative 2. So y equals negative 3 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3 halves x minus 4. So what is the slope of that line? 3 over 2. Don't include the x with that. The slope is just a number that we're using to measure sequence. Okay, if I give you ordered pairs, how do we find slope? Y2. So keep in mind this pair, this is like x1 and y1, x2 and y2. So y2, negative 14, minus y1 is 6, over x2 is 12, minus negative, so plus 4. So we have negative 20 divided by a positive 16. We usually kept these in fraction form because for graphing purposes, we like the rise over run, the fraction. So just in lowest terms, and remember if you do that on your calculator, you just do it as a divided by and hit math number 1. What does that reduce to?
Negative 5 over 4.
You can divide by 4 on top and bottom. What's the slope of a horizontal line? Don't know. Let's look at one then. Okay, if I drew a horizontal line, rise over run, if I took 2 points, to get from this one to this one, how much do we rise? 0 over my run is 1. What's 0 divided by 1? 0. Slope of a horizontal line is 0. What's the slope of a vertical line? Undefined. If you weren't sure, you could draw yourself a graph. Okay, if I tried rise over run, here I go up 1 but over 0, and we can't divide by 0, so vertical line is undefined. What's the, just as a side note, what's the equation of a horizontal line? Y equals a number, so in this case it'd be y equals 2, because my y value is 2. Vertical lines are x equals a number, so this would be x equals 1-ish, I think is what I was going for there. Alright. Are we okay with slope? So let's talk about equations. So, equations. We need to have a point and a slope before we can write the equation of a line. This one I gave you 2 points. So what is the first step? Y equals mx plus b form. So we need to get m if we're going to do that. So my m is x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 5 minus 7, -2. -2 minus 4 is -6. So what's that reduced to? 1/3. Okay. Then we took our slope and one of the points. Does it matter which one we use? No. So if I just went with the first one. Do you guys remember the equation? Point slope form? Y m times x minus x1. Yep. We'd say y minus the y value of that point is 7 equals our m, 1/3, times x minus the x value of that point was 4. Minus 7 equals 1/3 x minus 4/3. I didn't leave myself enough room. What do you do now? So you get y equals 1/3 x, -4/3 plus 7. Five and 2/3, or we could put 17/3. Okay, so equation of a line, we need at least one point and the slope. So we found our slope, took one of the points. Would you have gotten the same equation if you did the other point? Yes, it does not matter. All right, next one. We have the point. I didn't give you 2 points to write an equation. How am I going to get my slope? Okay, I've got my x and y. Where does my m come from? My slope. How do I get that here? What have I given you that gives information about the slope? I told you that it is perpendicular. What does perpendicular mean? Yeah, parallel. Sorry, there's no good way. My blinds just don't go all the way to the edge. Parallel is the same slope. Perpendicular is opposite reciprocals because that means they form a right angle. So if I look, what is the slope of this line? Negative 5/3 is the slope. So if I'm going to be perpendicular, my slope will flip and become a positive. So it will be a positive 3/5. So now I have my point and my slope, and I plug into the equation. Y minus y1. Y minus negative 7. Y plus 7 equals m times x minus negative 2, plus 2. So if we distribute, subtract our 7. Okay, 6/5 minus 7. Give us negative 29/5. You're free to use your calculator if the fractions get you. Okay, 23. If they are parallel, what does that tell me about my slopes? Same. So this one has a slope of 3. So my equation will have a slope of 3. So y minus y1, which is 8, equals m times x minus 2. And so we get our final equation there. Okay, I accidentally skipped 21. I did these out of order. But are we doing okay on those so far? So you need to remember parallel, same slope, perpendicular, what do you do? Opposite reciprocal. Flip it and change the sign. Okay, 21. If I want this equation, we really just need m and b.
There is no 20. Oh yeah, it's right here.
Okay. Makes me feel better. I skipped it. You guys didn't see it either. Huh? So, what is my y-intercept on this one? -1. We hit the y-axis at -1. Remember on these, if we are going to find our slope, we need to find a perfect point. So not one that we have to guess what it is. What would be a perfect point that we could find here?
-4.
Negative
Oh, -2.
2, -4. That would work. So my slope, if I do rise over run, from there we have to go up 1, 2, 3, and over 2. So my slope is 3/2. So then the equation y equals m x plus b equals 3/2 x minus 1. Any questions about writing those equations? Last piece concerning lines that I want to talk about. 24. I am asking you to find the x and y intercepts and use those to graph the line. This is actually not a very nice problem. Can I make a change to this problem so it works out a little bit better? Can I make this let's make it 12x. 12x plus 3y equals -6. It'll be a little bit nicer. Okay, find an x-intercept?
Pulling 0 after 4.
X-intercept is asking when it hits the x-axis, so that means your y is 0. So we get 12x. 3 times 0 is just 0, so we can drop that equals -6. Divide by 12. And we get a -1/2. Okay. If I ask for an ordered pair, the x is -1/2, what's the y? 0. Okay, so if I plot those, -1/2, 0 is where we hit the x-axis. Our best approximation at it. How do we find a y-intercept?
0 for x.
So we have 3y equals -6. So y is -2. Or if you did an ordered pair, the x was 0 and the y is -2. And once we have those, we have 2 points, so we can draw our line.